Sup KBA squad, this is Last Shelter and you're tuning in to Season 8 Hero Drop 6. We have the main man for the season, Flare, alongside a couple of other heroes that we're going to talk about. So you can see we have Wrath, Predator and Glutton, making this a pretty good drop, especially if you are looking for Flare. However, the backdrop is a little bit more complicated when we see the wider set, and they are Shadow, Lust, Iron Sentinel and Crusher. This is kind of like the main smaller hero drop pool, as week 7, like in every season, is where they have the entire roster of SX heroes that you can pull tickets against. So that's just purely random, there's no strategy to it, but this kind of represents the last small drop, especially if you had your eye on a few of these heroes to get a few copies before season rewards, or especially for next season with some of the newly announced heroes that I'll do in another video and sort of talk about them, mainly being shooters and fighters. Now, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our Last Shelter partner, Leo's VIP Club. Of course, your main man for APCs and base skins, where you can purchase them directly. Got an array of wider set skins that you can now pick up alongside cumulative event. We got a raft of choices now, especially some pretty sick ones, whether they are the support ones like the Floating City, the Lost Paradise and the Steam Fortress for your training speeds as you're trying to build up your troops, or some pretty dope ones like the Abyss Dominator, especially if you missed them in the previous skin rotations. So if you're in the market for them and want to get a fair price, then make sure you head over to Leo's VIP Club, where you can purchase them directly. I'll put the links down below. Alright, so you can see I currently have 84 super tickets. I'm not going to drop in this the last one, which had Siren, Huntress, Nomad. That was kind of like the last hero drop that I pulled. So if you want to see how that went, then check out my previous video. But I'm not planning to pull in this, and that was sort of preempted before this drop came, as it kind of finalized who would appear in this drop. I kind of mentioned it is a total of 8 season heroes, and it's pretty okay. Of course, the main one being Flare, and I'll kind of talk about where these heroes might interest you to dip in this, but also the risk factor, like always. So if we look at the 8 across, we have 1, 2, 3 fighters, 1, 2, 3 shooters and 2 vehicle heroes. The overall quality in this one is so-so. There's definitely a few that are pretty nice to complement and strengthen those APCs, whether they are metas or previous metas, although the effectiveness of these have sort of dwindled since the last few seasons. So let's first start off with Flare. Haven't talked much about him besides when he kind of first launched with Cyclone, and now that I've sort of seen him in action, a lot of the big metas that we see Flare running right now is of course with Siren, and then either with Dawn, any kind of other healers, whether they are Retrograder, Canoness, even Tech Priestess. But you'll find him rocked in primarily in all fighter formations, so pretty good if you want to just keep it simple with fighters. Flare being pretty much in the front row, he has kind of a counter-attack damage that is guaranteed. Every time he is hit, he is always going to respond back. He does very good damage as well, which is Flare Blade. So this is kind of like a counter-attack ability, but works very well. It is only to that one individual, but occurs as frequent as he is hit, so great against normal attack frequencies. Everything else is kind of the same. We get to his second skill, Burning Armor. This season they kind of added that influence by resistance piece. There's no value attached to it, or that we can see in battle reports, but the idea of it is if you have higher resistance than your enemy when a battle occurs, then the effect of this skill is going to improve. We don't know exactly how that works, so again, a lot of vagueness to it that the Last Shelter devs need to add more clarity on, rather than just seeing it's influenced by. But I wouldn't really read too much into that. Flare is also a straight up all status skill. First up, we have a damage debuff minus 25%. When it takes damage, the hero squad gains 30% might and stacks up to 10 layers until the end of battle. So in theory, this stacks up to 300% might, so he will get stronger as the battle goes on, which is nice, and it's also why you want him in the front, since a lot of those normal attacks are going to hit him. We then go to Fire of Annihilation, which again is a status skill. Each round makes 1 or 2 random enemy squads enter burning state, deals not only some damage but allows the additional damage to be dealt, which is 350%. So he's actually a different kind of damage dealer to everyone else that we have. Works super effective, and when you add that to high synergy of Scarlet Siren, who also adds burning damage, increases the combat skill damage, they are an excellent combo. So Flare and Siren really upping those meta combinations, and yeah, he's kind of going to be the main reason why you'd want to dip into this hero drop. Alongside Flare, I would actually move on to Wrath. Again, Wrath is still a great troop recovery block, an alternative to Scorpion. He isn't as efficient as Scorpion if you have Scorpion in that main meta combo of like Siren and Dawn, because of how efficient and quickly he's able to troop recovery block. But Wrath still being a vehicle troop recovery block alternative and still having that guaranteed troop recovery block among the entire formation rather than Scorpion's focused troop recovery block really well, and is still tough to beat. You'll still find him best suited with a Tech Priestess and a damage dealer, or just with Kamikaze in the front row, so that kind of is a great vehicle counter. But Wrath, if you still haven't got him maxed, or some copies will add to the worth. I do only have 1 copy of him, so while it will be nice to have, the overall backdrop is just still a little bit more complicated than that. The rest of them are kind of nice to haves and aren't as effective or ones that you'd want to go for. Previously, I would have said Predator would be great, still making that Anna Predator Huntress formation, and I do have a max in that actual APC max. And while she is sort of killer in that, her effectiveness and that combo effectiveness has kind of gone down over the previous season, so definitely not as overpowered or high killing as the others, especially since they lack a healing. You can obviously reconstruct them to sort of bridge some of those healing gaps and make them a bit stronger, and can still penetrate through, just not much of a garrison breaker as the new metas. She of course can still be nice, maybe play a 3rd APC alternative with Baneblade, and is still best suited with that Anna Huntress. But other than that, I wouldn't really worry too much if you haven't got Predator or don't have as much, because shooters currently are still kind of down, like low powered. So while you can play her with Nomad, Crochet, and still being pretty decent, the other APC metas are just going to be far higher. So she's kind of a nice to have, but not really why you'd also want to dip into this pool. Glutton, while I haven't used him too much, he's still a great defensive Q guy and underrated as a fighter hero. You can obviously play him with Flare as well, and while that's kind of an off meta, Glutton is a great defensive tank front row. And if you put Flare in the back row, even though that's not his ideal for him to execute as much damage, he still can prove to be pretty decent. So some kind of synergy here, but you'll find another healer, whether that's with Dawn, Canoness, and then adding a damage dealer like Siren or Flare with Glutton can still work pretty decent. Might not be your first choice, but gives you again more options to come across those tougher APCs. What I like about Glutton, besides Death Rider having full immunity, that kind of makes him pretty, really strong. Glutton's the only other Essex hero that provides some immunity to counters. He's reliable, so again, a nice to have, not one that you'd want to dip into this directly for, but pretty good otherwise. Lust, she's decent. You mainly just see a TP Wrath Lust unless you have Kamikaze. She is not really in the metas, so again, she's a decent damage dealer to have. You'll get through some APC combos, but not the main metas. She's just kind of a little bit down the pecking order when it comes to damage dealers, but she does have some unique abilities which help, such as immune to confusion, so great against a Tech Priestess. Also organic hunk, even if they're rocking that, and also plays great on the counter and poison. So again, whether that's with Scorpion or whatnot, her damage is medium. It's not crazy high like Hummingbird, but can be more of a specialist damage dealer to sort of break through those complicated APCs. Again, nice to have, not the most worth hero in this. And then we have Shadow. Shadow is decent actually. I think when you get him reconstructed in the Hero Lab, you can kind of boost up his worth. I think either play on his evasion, which can execute pretty decent. He has some good healing. If you add more consistency on that healing bolster, then I think it will help Shadow's case a little bit more. He's not really played much in the metas, but you might find some decent occasions where he's not bad. There's also off meta combos, but again, shooters being pretty low powered, with the exception of, I would say, like Nomad, and in some instances Koshé being decent as well. Yeah, he's okay slash decent to have, especially if you can get him reconstructed, but don't count on him replacing your higher APC metas anytime soon. Crusher, he's okay, had him maxed for a couple of seasons now, and I kind of mainly use him for not getting any troop loss on forced tiling, or just when I'm tiling. I don't really run him in combat. I still would just default to Kamikaze on a two copies. Crusher is just okay, but he can be easily countered with his healing and his skills because they are combat related. He has some nice tankiness, so he can resist, but you do need to support him with extra healing, or just immunity protection, or just going higher on the damage. He's okay, but honestly not really great. So even though he's max, I just don't really run him, which kind of speaks how good he kind of is. The worst one being Iron Sentinel, just not a great fighter hero. He's a little bit of everything, honestly a master of nothing. Has some defensiveness abilities, damage debuff, kind of like Caesar, but even Caesars are more effective than Iron Sentinel. And considering his fighters is just much more subpar than the other fighter heroes that we have. Overall, is this worth dipping into? I would say for the majority of you guys, you'll probably pass. Flare again is a great one to have, but you would probably need some of the meta heroes to make it worth risking against this backdrop. If you have Dawn, if you have Siren, then I would say yes. Siren kind of needing to be the prerequisite to make her worth it. Everyone else is kind of okay to have. I would say Wrath is also one of the better ones to get in this, so 2 out of the 8. Other ones, if you don't have duplicates of, will be nice developments, but they may not work into APC straight away, so just bear that in mind. Otherwise, you're really just going to be saving for next season, or just risking it all in next week's All SX Hero Pool and just seeing whether you strike gold or not. But that's Hero Drop 6 here in Season 8. Let me know if you dropped your tickets in the comment section below KBA Squad, how many tickets you pulled, the average RNG, what heroes you got, and whether you need some help on what skills you need to unlock first. But yeah, that's it. I will see you in the next Last Shelter video. But until then, keep being awesome. Peace. Yeah.